Right, we're live now, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Policy and Finance meeting on Monday, the 28th of March, 2022. I'd like to hand over to the Acting Town Clerk, Matt Snowden, just to discuss the way in which this meeting is being held and the rules with regarding delegations of duties. Thank you.
Due to the Emergency Coronavirus Act not extending to allow meetings to meet remotely to make resolutions, when it could do that, this council resolved in committee meetings to still take place remotely, with all powers of resolution being devolved to the clerk. All powers of resolution the council has. Anything that needs more than a recommendation will go to full council, where the council still meet in person to resolve that, and we'll be reviewing in the next 2 or 3 months how we continue with our meetings. We are just aware at this very present moment, COVID is on the rise again, so we're being as cautious as possible.
Thank you for that, Matt. Do we have any apologies for absence?
I've Councillor Chloe Hopkins, Councillor Thomas Dell, and Councillor Peter Stell is going to try and get to the meeting if he can.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. But we are, just to confirm, we are quorate with 4 members attending. Thank you. Can I move on to agenda item number 3, please? Declarations to record declarations of interest by any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below. Members declaring interest should identify the agenda item and type of interest being declared. Welcome, Councillor Willis. Do I have any declarations of interest?
No.
No, thank you. Excellent. And are there any dispensations?
None received, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 4. And this is to note the minutes of the Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on Monday, the 21st of February, which was approved and signed at full council on Monday, the 21st of March, 2022. So that's just to be noted.
Noted.
Very much. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 5A. This is to review the current account payments made between the 1st of March, 2022 and the 31st of March 2022. Oh, we've got Anne twice.
Right. Yeah. I've got a couple of comments.
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
One is very near the beginning, debit, the second of the third, debit refreshments. That's a bit vague. Later on, there's one debit heron refreshments, and that's more obvious what it means.
Thank you. I'll just hand over to Matt, and perhaps.
Well, I'll go through all 3, shall I?
Oh, okay.
8th of the third, flagpole. I think it should be installation, not installation.
No, that is insulation. That is the kind of insulation, foam insulation that goes around pipes. It's insulation that goes around the flags to make sure they're secure into the flagpole holders.
Okay, so insulation is correct.
Yep.
Correct.
And
Councillor Horsley, perhaps we could talk about the first comment that you made with regard to the debit card payment for refreshments on the 2nd of March. Perhaps Matt could just confirm what those refreshments were for.
They were to replenish the refreshments in the office. Basically, it worked out more cost effective to get a very, very large bag of tea bags.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It might be worth saying office refreshments, or there's something of that kind.
Yeah, we can look at that for the future.
Anyway,
and your
almost at the end, 3,600 legal advice. I don't remember what that legal advice was, but I think you did tell us at one point.
Matt?
That's legal advice that was sought by the Personnel Committee and is within their terms to be able to seek that for support.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other queries?
If I could just mention some things, Madam Chair, if that's all right.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll notice that it's a lot higher this year. The amount that this month, the amount we're spending. A lot of that is because of quite a few of our invoices from the East Riding come in at the very end of the financial year. These are particularly there's 222,514 annual monitoring. That's the annual monitoring cost of the CCTV that is monitored by the East Riding, that the Town Council covers costs for. Going back to the second page, this is where a lot of the items are that are larger. We've finally had the invoices for the past by-elections, of course, through council resignations. To clarify, the St Mary's West by-election, that actually took place in 2020. We've only just received the invoice for that. The first St Mary's East by-election for £3,701. Whilst that by-election was called off because of the lockdown, the East Riding had already produced and distributed the polling cards. So we still have to bear the cost of the polling cards and the work that was done on that before the pandemic caused and the lockdown caused the actual election to be cancelled. The Minster South by-election has come through for £7,920. And then later on in the list, you'll see the actual St Mary's East by-election when it could take place, 5,043. The costs vary for the by-elections. It depends how many polling stations are required, how many residents there are will mean more residents, more polling cards. In particular, the St Mary's East by-election is less than the Minster South because it took place the same day as the Crime Commissioner elections. Therefore, some of the cost for the election was taken by the covering the cost for the Commissioner elections. When it came to the Minster South, the only election held was the by-election, which is why the cost was more. In the same way, when we have the full council elections, we don't pay as much as we do for by-elections because part of the cost is borne by the East Riding, because it's also East Riding elections at the same time. And just finally, the Christmas tree that we couldn't get in time this year has been ordered from this year's finances, will arrive so it can be in place a statement piece next year. And the CCTV cameras and monitor for the police station, which were budgeted for this year, they've been purchased as well. And just one more thing, the salaries are slightly higher than usual because only in the past few weeks has the national pay agreement for the national increment been approved for this financial year. So it's backdated to the 1st of April last year, and that's the national pay increment with the NJC scales.
There's another point there, which is that next to it you have pensions which are almost as high as salaries. Is that because the pensions are for the whole year and the salaries only for the quarter?
Part of that is there's been elements of pension amounts rising as well to cover proportionately, and some other payments that we're paying now that we didn't pay earlier. So it's over the year it pans out, but again at the end of a financial year, this is where all of these things get caught.
Thank you, Matt. Are you happy with that, Councillor Horsley?
Yes, fine.
Thank you very much, Councillor Healy. You're on mute, Dennis.
Sorry about that.
There we go. No worries. We've all done it.
No, I don't like it when that happens, and I always say, "Oh, don't do that." But I've just done it, so I do apologise. Now, just a comment and a question, and the comment really is to note that the 3 councillors who resigned during the course of the last couple of years or so, after having been democratically elected, have in fact cost the public purse £20,000 or thereabout. I think that should be a matter of public record that those individuals have cost the taxpayer that because they couldn't, for whatever reason, continue with their democratically elected term of office, which is a shame for the public of Beverley and a shame for the exchequer of this council, but hopefully they'll reflect on that. And the other question I had, Chair, was the Christmas, the Blashare, the 15,000. Can you just explain what that's about and where what those costs generally relate to?
Yeah, that is a big statement piece that the town council approved last year, which is a large Christmas tree, but shape formed of large parcels that are illuminated, which will be a centre point piece at the we still call Wilco's Corner, even though Wilco's is now the cross street corner outside Mountain Warehouse and White Company. That will be the main feature that council approved last year, but because of delays in supply chain due to the pandemic, they couldn't guarantee it would be here by Christmas. So council agreed we'll still purchase it within this year's budget, which we've now done. So it will arrive in plenty of time and still be warranty for next year. Well, for this year's Christmas.
Okay, so just so we're all clear that we're paying in advance for Christmas 2022. This doesn't relate to Christmas 2021.
It's within this year's budget, but it will go up. We've not actually got the piece yet, but it's on order, will be delivered. And just to go back to what you said about the by-elections, it works out as just over £23,500.
Thank you for clarifying that point.
Thank you. Could I ask a question, please, Acting Town Clerk? The Kitchen Lane allotment situation, has that now been rectified?
Yes, that was a problem with a pit that had formed on quite a sizable allotment. Where it was located, a lot of manual work had to be done to fill that in, because you can't get a vehicle, the sort of vehicle that would bring the soil and what to fill it in. So we went to a tendering process. The successful tender has now filled it with brick and brick type fill, because it was initially so damp and sinking, with then topsoil on top. So there's a lot of manual labour to bool that in, and on the face of it, something like that may not look like it needs a lot, but it needed a hell of a lot to fill it. So that has now been resolved to the satisfaction of the allotment holder.
The allotment holder is now happy that that work has been completed.
Yes.
Their satisfaction. That's excellent news. Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any other questions with regard to the current account payments? No. Can I have a proposer and a second? Monetary movements, please. Thank you. Councillor Healy to propose and Councillor Horsley to second. Are we all happy with them? Can we just go?
Agreed.
Nods. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Can we move on to 5B, to review credit card payments made between the 1st of March 2022 and the 31st of March 2022? So this looks like a very tiny amount.
Yes, Madam Chair, we've moved most payments onto the main account rather than the credit card. This is relating to two payments. So the £3.18 is February, March for one of our email addresses. We've migrated all of the rest of our email addresses to the Holbeck system, but during the absence of a member of staff through illness, we can't access their email. They would have to access that to resolve that issue. So until we can do that, we'll just be paying that. But unfortunately, it's a very minor amount, but we'll hopefully be able to resolve that eventually. And then that account would also be migrated across to Holbeck as well.
Thank you. Do you have any queries about that? I think that's a very comprehensive descriptor as to why that small amount of money is being paid. I'm happy to propose that. If I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Willis. If we're all happy with that payment, lots of nods. Thank you very much. And to review the bank balances at agenda item 5C. Again, are there any queries with regard to these amounts? You can see it's been rather a large spend this month. So yes, Councillor Horsley.
It would be worth having a comment on why it is that we get about £90 interest in the last quarter. and virtually nothing before that. That's in the big account.
With regard to the CCLA account.
Yeah.
The CCLA comes in monthly. I'll have to look into why it's more, but because it's based on what income it generates, I think that fluctuates. So I can look into that, exactly why that's.
Well, it may involve in some months the charges being made against it.
Yeah, and the Beverley Building Society account, that comes in annually. That's why you don't see any movement in it through the year. It's the same throughout the year, and then it'll come in and it'll be the same for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other comments? No, do I have a proposer for that? Thank you, Councillor Halsey, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jack. Are we all happy with those bank balances? They, of course, do get checked by independent councillors.
Auditors. Oh, those councillors.
And of course by the auditors as well.
And the auditor in the end, yeah.
Sorry, my computer just froze. Can I just double check who seconded that, please?
Councillor Jack.
Thank you.
And that was carried. Okay, let's move on to item 6. To consider and where required resolve any further matters relating to the town council's gas supply issue. Matt, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so just hold me. Sorry, my computer's trying to do one of it. Now's your time to restart. Right, and it isn't, so I've stopped that. Right, yeah. So we've now received from Northern Gas Works their calculation for the amount of gas owed that we realised when the boiler broke last year that the town council was on an unregistered supply, so it was reported straight away to Northern Gas Networks. They've finally written back to us, and the amount they've calculated is £17,200.46. Now, we will be able to claim the VAT back of that, which is 119. So at the end of the day, the council will expend £16,381.39, but in the immediacy, the payment to Northern Gas Networks is £17,200.46. And I can also confirm that regarding the first bill from British Gas, we will have that for the next payment round in April. But it's to make council aware that that's coming, so councils now have to resolve which way they like to go, what they'd like to do regarding the £17,200.46.
Councillors have indicated they'd like to speak. Councillor Willis?
Can we not, sorry, still suffering from COVID, can we not dispute that? I don't know about businesses, but if it was a private house, you only have to pay the last year. And I think we ought to speak to Citizen Advice Bureau or somebody like that and see if we've got any case to lower it and only pay a year or two or whatever.
Councillor Horsley, did you want to comment before I go?
Yes, it's quite separate from that.
Okay.
Well, not entirely. I think that unless we have good reason for thinking that that is wrong in some way, and Anne's comments are relevant here, that we should pay it as requested. But it is worth doing that check first.
Can I ask for your comment, please, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, if you actually look at the amount used, it isn't extortionate. It works out at, just to split across the 17 years, it works out to about £1,011 a year, which if we then divided that by 12 is just over £84 a month, which in all honesty seems like a fair calculation
Yeah,
as to how much owed. From what I can gather, I think residential is one thing regarding the as Councillor Willis says, but we're classed as a business, and it's about knowledge of what happened, whether the council knew, whether the business knew, and what the process around it. So it's quite complex, but that is the calculation that they've come to, and it is less than we anticipated. But again, it was up to council to decide where they want to go with this from now on.
So have we had a recent bill in, Matt, with regard to gas since we became connected?
Not yet. We're waiting it at the end of this month. Right. So it's not come through yet. That's why it'll be in the next round. But I suspect it will be more than that split up due to rising costs in general. So what they've actually calculated it as being per month, if we had it the same amount per month every month 17 years, probably works out less than we're going to be paying going forward simply due to the climate.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, we have looked into this, and the limitations do not apply in this case because we're not a residential operation. So we have looked into that point there. The Northern Gas Networks have used established rates which apply in this situation going back to 2004. It is roughly it's roughly £1,000 a year. It is not excessive. It's probably about half the figure that was the media were quoting, and goodness knows why they were quoting that figure. I think it was to do with some unallocated spend that we were going to use to spend to fund this from. So I think that it is reasonably good value. I don't think it's appropriate for the town council to be questioning its gas bill that it hasn't paid for 17 years when our residents are being faced with crippling energy costs. And I think that it's a reasonable amount of money, and I think that the council should pay its bills. It has been obtaining gas for 17 years illegally, and that's completely unacceptable. And I think that this bill should now be paid at the earliest opportunity. And I would therefore move that it is paid.
Thank you. Councillor Willis.
Yeah, I agree. If we have no alternative, yeah, and it is reasonable. Sorry, I thought it was going to be a lot more, but it is reasonable. So let's get it paid and get it out of the way and finished with.
So would you like to second?
I'll second. Yeah, I'll second.
That's great. So proposed Councillor Healy that we pay the bill. Seconded Councillor Willis. All in favour? Yeah. Carried unanimously.
Right, thank you. So the process now is once these minutes have been resolved, because whilst I have delegated responsibility of council, these are recommendations, a little bit like we have with grants because of the high level that we give to grants. With these minutes, once these minutes are approved at full council in April, we'll then make the payment, and I will liaise with Northern Gas Networks so they're aware of that. I have previously explained to them that it may take a little bit of time because we're not a business, so we have to make sure that there's proper democratic process. So once these minutes are approved at full council, the payment will be made the next day.
That's great. Great to be out of there. Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Let's move on to agenda item number 7 with regard to a pension policy.
Yes, Madam Chair, we need to have a pension policy. I'd like to thank my colleague Carol for working on this. She did some investigation, and the best way forward is to basically use the documentation that's the same as the East Riding Pension Fund. All members of staff are in the East Riding Pension Fund, our local sectors fund that we can pay into, even though we're not the East Riding. So the documents are there. It's a specialist thing. It's not like the council policies where, as officers and councillors, we're experts in what should be in a policy. Pensions people are experts in what should be in a pension policy. We believe this is appropriate if the East Riding Pension Fund use it. It's appropriate for us as well.
Thank you. Are there any queries? Any comments, Councillor Willis?
Sorry, some of it I just don't understand, and whether it's just me and my thick brain or not, I don't know. I don't understand when it says this discretion will not be exercised. What discretion?
Yeah,
And am I being stupid?
Yeah, there's various different
Yes, he
discretions
says.
in the appendix that employers can choose to use or not use. It gives you almost like a toolbox to develop the way your pensions work.
Right. So we're just going with the East, more or less what is the East Riding's policy.
Yeah, with the East Riding Pension Fund, and as with all policies, this will be a recommendation for full council to adopt it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If I can go through a sort of simplified version, it seems to me all of these are suggestions that we are now allowed to give a better deal to employees who choose to leave after they are 50 but before they are 60. And we can say either that we adopted a particular section there, or that we don't adopt it, or, which is the one that we've been advised to choose in most cases, that we will decide whether to adopt this policy in each individual case after considering all the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Healy.
I think that's correct. What Councillor Horsley said there. So the additional contributions and the power of the authority to grant additional pension is not going to be exercised. So the option 1 in the regulation 16.2 it says it's at the discretion. So the discretion will be considered an application by an eligible employee, and that needs to be considered on its merits. I mean, the East Riding pension scheme is incredibly generous. It's one of the most generous public sector schemes that there is, and I think it's important that we are allowed to exercise discretion, and that we don't have a sort of blanket payment for employees who leave, but that that there is discretion made and exercised in each case. And I think that really is what this is saying, and it brings it into line with these changes which actually the East Riding Council have adopted, because these amendments came into force last year. So I think it's just really a kind of technicality for us to accept this, and on the basis of doing that, we retain discretion in cases where employees retire early.
Any other comments?
It's worth saying that if employees are leaving on health grounds, none of this applies. They automatically get most of these things if it is on health grounds. And if they retire when they are over 60, most of this doesn't apply, because they will automatically get the benefit of this if they retire when they're over 60.
Everybody happy?
So a proposal and a seconder, please, Madam Chair.
I'm happy to propose on the chair.
And then Dennis was the second.
Dennis seconded.
Okay.
In that case, Madam Chair, it's 1900 hours.
Excellent. And there being